Chapter 70. The Ball. The hottest days of July had come when the calendar arrived at the Saturday appointed for Monsieur de Morcerf's ball. It was 10 o'clock in the evening. The large trees in the Count's garden were sharply outlined against a sky across which drifted the last tufts of cloud from the storm that had been threatening all day, to reveal an azure field sprinkled with golden stars. From the ground-floor rooms one could hear the blast of music and the swirling of the waltz and the gallop, while sharp bands of light shone out through the slats of the Persian blinds. The garden, for the time being, was solely the province of a dozen or so servants, who had just been ordered to lay out the supper by their mistress, who was reassured at seeing the steady improvement in the weather. Until then she had been unsure whether to eat in the dining-room or under a long canvas awning set up above the lawn. But this lovely blue sky, full of stars, had now settled the issue in favour of the awning and the lawn. The garden paths were lit by coloured lamps, as is the custom in Italy, and the supper-table was laden with candles and flowers, as is the custom in all countries where they understand how to dress a table, which, when properly done, is the rarest of all luxuries. Just as the Countess de Morcerf had given her last orders and was returning indoors, the drawing-rooms began to fill with guests, attracted more by the Countess's charming hospitality than by the distinguished position of the Count. Everyone knew in advance that the party would supply them with some details which would either be worth relating or, in the event, copying, thanks to Mercedes's good taste. Madame Danglars had been so deeply disturbed by the events we have described that she was reluctant to attend, but that morning her carriage had crossed Villefort's. The latter signalled to her. The two carriages pulled up alongside each other, and the Crown Prosecutor said through the window, "You are going to Madame de Morcerf's, I suppose?" "No," answered Madame Danglars. "I'm not well enough." "That is a mistake," Villefort said with a significant look. "It is important for you to be seen there." "Oh, do you think so?" the Baroness asked. "I do." "Then I shall go." Then the two carriages had continued on their separate ways. However, Madame Danglars did come, looking beautiful not only with her own beauty, but dressed with dazzling extravagance. She was just coming in through one door when Mercedes entered by the other. The Countess sent Albert to greet Madame Danglars, and he came forward, offered the Baroness some well-deserved compliments on her dress, and took her arm to lead her wherever she wanted to go. At the same time he looked around. "Are you looking for my daughter?" the Baroness asked with a smile.
"I confess I am. Surely you have not been so cruel as to leave her at home?"
"Don't worry. She met Mademoiselle de Villefort, who led her away. Look, they are there behind us, both in white dresses, one with a bouquet of camellias, the other with a bouquet of forget-me-nots. But tell me—"
"And what are you looking for?"
Albert asked, smiling. "Will you not be having the Count of Monte Cristo this evening?"
17, Albert replied.
What do you mean?"
"I mean that all is well," said the Viscount, laughing, "and that you are the 17th person to ask me the same question. He's popular, the Count. I must compliment him."
"And do you answer everyone in the same way?"
"Ah, you're quite right. I didn't answer. Have no fear, madame. We shall be privileged to receive the man of the moment."
"Were you at the opera yesterday?"
"No."
"He was."
"Really? And did the eccentric signore do anything out of the ordinary?"
"Can he appear in public otherwise? Elsler was dancing in Le Diable Boiteux. The Greek princess was delighted. After the cha-cha-cha, he slipped a superb ring on the stems of a bouquet and threw it to the delightful ballerina, who reappeared in the third act with the ring on her finger as a tribute to him. Will his Greek princess be here?"
No, you must do without her. Her status in the Count's entourage is slightly ambiguous.
Now, leave me and go to pay your respects to Madame de Villefort, said the Baroness. I can see that she's dying to speak to you. Albert bowed and went across to Madame de Villefort, whose mouth started to open even as he was approaching her.
I bet, he said, interrupting, that I can guess what you're about to say.
Well, I never, said Madame de Villefort.
Will you admit it if I'm right?
Yes.
On your honour?
On my honour.
You were going to ask me if the Count of Monte Cristo had arrived or if he was coming.
Nothing of the sort. I'm not concerned with him at the moment. I was going to ask if you had any news of Monsieur Franz.
Yes, yesterday.
And what did he have to say?
That he was leaving at the same time as his letter.
Very well.
And now, what about the Count? The Count will come, have no fear.
Did you know he has another name, apart from Monte Cristo?
No, I didn't.
Monte Cristo is the name of an island, and he does have a family name.
I've never heard it.
Well, I know more than you do. He's called Zaccone.
Possibly.
He is a Maltese.
That's also possible.
The son of a shipowner.
Oh, come now. You should be telling everybody about it. You'd have a huge audience.
He served in India, has a silver mine in Thessaly, and has come to Paris to set up, selling mineral water in Auteuil.
Well, it's about time, said Morcerf. This really is news. Can I repeat it?
Yes, but little by little, one item at a time, without saying that it comes from me.
Why?
Because it's almost a secret I've found out.
From where?
The police.
And where was the news travelling?
At the prefect's yesterday evening. The authorities were put out, you understand, by this unusual ostentation, so the police made some inquiries.
Huh? You might as well arrest the Count as a vagabond on the excuse of his being too rich.
Which is just what might have happened to him if the information had not been so much in his favour.
Poor Count. Does he know the danger he was in?
I don't think so.
Well, it is only right and proper to let him know. I shall certainly do it as soon as he arrives.
At that moment, a handsome young man with sparkling eyes, black hair, and a well-waxed moustache came to pay his respects to Madame de Villefort. Albert held out his hand.
Madame, he said, I have the honour to introduce Monsieur Maximilien Morel, Captain of Spahi, one of our fine and most of all brave officers.
I have already had the pleasure of meeting this gentleman in Auteuil at the Count of Monte Cristo's, Madame de Villefort replied, turning away with distinct coldness. This reply, and, most of all, the tone in which it was delivered, wrung poor Morel's heart, but a consolation with it was in store. Turning around, he saw a beautiful, pale face in the doorway, its wide and apparently expressionless eyes fixed on him, while the bouquet of forget-me-nots was raised to its lips. This greeting was well enough understood by Morel for him to lift his handkerchief to his mouth, though with the same blank expression on his face. These two living statues, whose hearts were beating so rapidly despite the marble calm of their faces, separated from one another by the whole length of the room, momentarily forgot themselves, or rather momentarily forgot everyone else in their silent contemplation of one another. Indeed, they could have remained for a long time in this way, lost in each other, without anyone noticing their total self-absorption. The Count of Monte Cristo had just come in. As we have already mentioned, either because of some imagined aura or because of his natural presence, he attracted attention wherever he went. It was not his black coat, superbly though it was cut, simple and without decoration. It was not his plain white waistcoat, nor was it his trousers, fitting over a delicately shaped foot, that attracted attention. It was his dark complexion, his wavy black hair, his pure, calm face, his deep, melancholy eye, and, finally, his exquisitely formed mouth, which could so easily adopt an expression of sovereign contempt, which drew all eyes to him. There may have been more handsome men, but there was surely none more significant, if we may be allowed to use the word. Everything about the Count meant something and carried some weight, for the habit of positive thought had given to his features, to the expression on his face, and to the least of his gestures, an incomparable strength and suppleness. Apart from which, our society here in Paris is so strange that it might have paid no attention to all that, were it not that behind it lay a mysterious tale, gilded by a huge fortune. However it may be, he came forward, running the gauntlet of stares and cursory greetings, towards Madame de Morcerf, who, standing in front of the mantelpiece, had observed his entrance in a mirror facing the doorway and was getting ready to receive him. She consequently turned around with a well-judged smile at this very moment when he bowed in front of her. Doubtless she thought that the Count would say something, and doubtless on his side he was expecting her to address him. But both remained silent, each surely feeling that a mere commonplace would be unworthy of them, and after they had exchanged these silent salutations, Monte Cristo turned and began to walk towards Albert, who came to greet him with hand outstretched. "You saw my mother?" Albert asked. "I have just had the honour of paying her my respects," said the Count, "but I did not see your father." "There, he's over there talking politics in that small circle of great celebrities." "Really?" said Monte Cristo. "Are the gentlemen I can see down there celebrities? I should never have guessed. What kind? There are all sorts of celebrities, you know." "First a scientist, that dry old stick. He discovered a species of lizard in the Roman Campagna, which has one vertebra more than any other, and has come back to inform the Institute of his discovery. There was a long debate on the matter, but the dry old stick won the day. The vertebra attracted a lot of attention in the scientific world, and the old stick, who used to be a Knight of the Legion of Honour, is now an officer of the Order." "Excellent," said Monte Cristo. "The decoration seems to me to have been judiciously awarded. And if he finds another extra vertebra, they will make him a commander?" "Quite probably," said Morcerf. "What about that other gentleman who has had the unusual notion of dressing up in a blue coat with green piping? What species can he be?" "It wasn't his idea to dress up in that coat. It was the Republic, which, as you know, was something of an artist, and thought it would give some kind of uniform to members of the French Academy, so it asked David to design them a coat." "Really?" said Monte Cristo. "You mean the gentleman is an academician?" "He has been a member of the Learned Assembly for a week." "And what is his talent, his speciality?" "His speciality? I think he sticks pins in rabbits' heads, feeds madder to hens, and uses whales to cultivate the spinal columns of dogs." "And he is in the Academy of Sciences because of that?" "No, in the French Academy." "But what has that all got to do with the French Academy?" "I'll tell you. It seems... His experiments have greatly advanced science, I presume?" "No, but he writes them up in a very fine style." "That," said the Count, "must be most gratifying for the self-respect of the rabbits into whose heads he sticks pins, the hens whose bones he colours red, and the dogs whose columns he cultivates." Albert started to laugh. "What about that other person?" asked the Count. "Which one?"
The third, the cornflower blue coat. Yes. A colleague of the Count's who has just emphatically opposed a measure in the upper house to give its members a uniform. His speeches on the topic were warmly applauded. He was in bad odour with the liberal press, but his noble opposition to the wishes of the court has put him back in favour with them, and there is talk that he might be made an ambassador.
What entitles him to the peerage?
He's written 2 or 3 comic operas, fought 4 or 5 lawsuits against Le Siècle, and voted 5 or 6 times for the government.
"Hurrah, Viscount," said Monte Cristo with a laugh. "You are a delightful guide. Now, will you do something for me?"
"What?"
"Don't introduce these gentlemen to me, and if they ask to be introduced to me, give me a good warning." At that moment he felt a hand on his arm. He looked around to see Danglars. "Ah, it's you, Baron," he said.
"Why do you call me Baron?" said Danglars. "You know very well that I care nothing for my title, unlike you, Viscount. You do care for yours, I think." "Undoubtedly," said Albert, "since if I were not a Viscount I should be nothing, while you can give up your title of Baron and you would still be a millionaire."
"And that seems to me the finest of titles under our July monarchy," said Danglars. "Unfortunately," said Monte Cristo, "one cannot be a millionaire for life, as one is a baron, a peer of the realm, or an academician. Look at the millionaires Frank and Pullman of Frankfurt, who have just gone bankrupt." No, really?" said Danglars, going pale. "Why, yes. I got the news only this evening by courier. I had something like 1 million with them, but I was given due warning and had myself reimbursed almost a month ago."
"Oh, good Lord," said Danglars. They drew on me for 200,000 francs.
"Well, you have been warned. Their signature is worth 5%.
But the warning comes too late," said Danglars. "I honoured their signature."
"Well, now," said Monte Cristo, "that's 200,000 francs which have gone to—"
"Hush!" said Danglars. "Don't speak about such things."
Then, coming closer to Monte Cristo, he added, "Especially not in front of the younger Cavalcanti," at which he turned around, smiling in the direction of the young man. Morcerf had left the Count to go and talk to his mother. Danglars left him to speak to young Cavalcanti, and for a moment Monte Cristo found himself alone. The heat was starting to become unbearable. Valets were walking around the drawing-rooms bearing trays laden with fruit and ices. Monte Cristo took out a handkerchief and wiped a face dripping with sweat, but he shrank back when the tray passed by him and partook of no refreshment. Madame de Morcerf had not taken her eyes off Monte Cristo. She saw the tray pass untouched, and even noticed his movement away from it. "Albert," she said, "have you noticed something?"
"What, mother?"
"The Count has never wanted to accept an invitation to dine with Monsieur de Morcerf."
"Yes, but he did agree to take lunch at my house, since that is when he made his entrée into society."
"With you is not the same as with the Count," Mercedes muttered. "I have been watching him since he arrived."
"Well?"
"Well, he has not yet taken anything to eat or drink."
"He is very abstemious."
Mercedes smiled sadly. "Go over to him," she said, "and the next time the tray comes round, insist."
"Why, mother?"
"Just do it for me, Albert," Mercedes said. Albert kissed his mother's hand and took up his position near the Count. Another tray came past, loaded like the rest. She saw Albert pressing the Count to take something, and even offering him an ice, but the Count obstinately refused. Albert returned to his mother's side. She was very pale. "Did you see?" she said. He refused.
Why are you worried about that? You know, Albert, we women are peculiar. I should have been pleased to see the Count take something in my house, if only a pomegranate seed. But perhaps he is not used to French manners, or he might have some preference for something in particular. No, I'm sure of it. I saw him taste everything in Italy. I expect he is feeling unwell this evening.
Since he has always lived in hot countries, the Countess said, he may be less sensitive than other people to the heat.
I don't think so, because he complained that it was stifling and asked why, since the windows had already been opened, the shutters were not opened as well.
Yes, Mercedes said, that's a way of finding out if his abstinence is deliberate. She left the room, and a moment later the shutters were opened, and through the jasmine and clematis that hung around the windows, one could see the whole garden lit up with lamps and the supper laid out under the awning. The men and women on the dance floor, gamblers and talkers, all let out cries of joy, their thirsty lungs drinking in the air which poured into the room. At the same time Mercedes reappeared, paler than when she left, but with a remarkable expression of determination which her face took on in certain circumstances. She went directly to the group around her husband and said, "Count, please don't keep these gentlemen here. If they are not playing cards, I am sure they would prefer to breathe in the garden than to suffocate here."
"Oh, madame,"
said a very gallant old general who had sung Partons pour la Syrie in 1809,
"we will not go into the garden alone."
"Very well," said Mercedes, "I shall set you an example." And she turned towards Monte Cristo. "Monsieur le Comte, please do me the honour of giving me your arm." The Count seemed almost to stagger on hearing these simple words. Then he looked at Mercedes for a moment. The moment lasted as long as a flash of lightning, but to the Countess it seemed to last a century. So much intensity of thought did Monte Cristo put into this single glance. He offered the Countess's arm, and she leant on it, or rather she allowed her little hand to brush against it, and the two of them went down one of the staircases outside the French windows, bordered with rhododendron and camellias. By the other staircase, with noisy cries of delight, some 20 guests hurried along behind them into the garden. Chapter 71. Bread and Salt. Madame de Morcerf directed her companion under the arbour of linden trees that led towards a greenhouse. "It was too hot in the drawing-room, wasn't it, Count?" she said. "Yes, madame. It was an excellent idea of yours to open the doors and the shutters." As he said these words, the Count noticed that Mercedes's hand was trembling. "But perhaps you are cold, with that light dress and no other protection around your neck except a chiffon scarf," he said. "Do you know where I am taking you?" the Countess asked, not answering Monte Cristo's question. "No, madame," he replied, "but as you see, I am offering no resistance." "To the greenhouse down there, at the end of this path." The Count looked at her questioningly, but she carried on without a word, so he too said nothing. They arrived at the building, hung with splendid fruit which matured at the beginning of July in this temperature, designed to replace that of the sun which is so unreliable in our climate. The Countess let go of Monte Cristo's arm and went to pluck a bunch of grapes from a vine. "Here, Count," she said, with such a sad smile that it did not disguise the tears at the corners of her eyes. "Take it. Our French grapes are not, I know, comparable to those you have in Sicily or Cyprus, but I know you will excuse our pale northern sun." The Count bowed and took a pace backwards. "Are you refusing me?" said Mercedes, her voice quivering. "Madame," Monte Cristo replied, "I beg you most humbly to forgive me, but I never eat Muscat grapes." Mercedes let the bunch fall with a sigh. A magnificent peach was hanging from a nearby shrub, warmed like the vine by the artificial heat of the greenhouse. Mercedes went over to the luscious fruit and picked it. "Then take this peach," she said. But the Count made the same gesture of refusal. "Again," she said, with such a pained note in her voice that one could feel it covered a sob. "Truly, I am unfortunate." There was a long silence. The peach, like the bunch of grapes, had fallen on the sand. "Monsieur le Comte," Mercedes said finally, looking imploringly at Monte Cristo, "there is a touching Arab custom that promises eternal friendship between those who have shared bread and salt under the same roof." "I know it, madame," the Count replied, "but we are in France and not in Arabia, and in France there is no more eternal friendship than there is sharing of bread and salt." "But we are friends, are we not?" she said, breathing rapidly and looking directly into Monte Cristo's eyes while clasping his arm with both hands. The blood rushed to the Count's heart, and he became as white as death. Then it rose from his heart to his throat and spread across his cheeks. For a few moments his eyes would not focus, like those of a man dazzled by a bright light. "Of course we are friends, madame," he replied. "Why should we not be?" His tone was so far from the one that Madame de Morcerf desired that she turned away with a sigh that was almost a groan. "Thank you," she said, then started to walk on. In this way they went round the whole garden without saying a word. "Monsieur," the Countess suddenly resumed, after they had walked for 10 minutes in silence, "is it true that you have seen so much, travelled so far, and suffered so deeply?" "Yes, madame, I have suffered a great deal," he said. "But you are happy now?" "Yes, of course," the Count replied. "No one hears me complain." "And does your present happiness calm your soul?" "My present happiness equals my past misery," said the Count. "Have you ever married?" "Married?" Monte Cristo replied, shuddering. "Who told you that?" "No one, but several times you have been seen at the opera with a beautiful young woman." "She is a slave whom I bought in Constantinople, madam, the daughter of a prince whom I took for my own, not having anyone else to cherish." "So you live alone?" "I do." "You have no sister, son, father?" "No one." "How can you live like that, with nothing attaching you to life?" "It is not my fault, madame. In Malta I loved a girl and was going to marry her when the war came and swept me away from her like a whirlwind. I thought that she loved me enough to wait for me, even to remain faithful to my tomb. When I came back, she was married. This is the story of every man who is aged over 20. Perhaps my heart was weaker than that of others, and I suffered more than they would in my place. That's all." The Countess stopped for a moment, as if needing to recover her breath. "Yes," she said, "and that love has remained in your heart. One is only really in love once. Did you ever see her again?" "Never." "Never?" "I did not go back to the country where she lived." "To Malta?" "Yes, to Malta." "So she is in Malta, then?" "I think so." And have you forgiven her what she made you suffer? Her I have forgiven, yes. But only her. You still hate those who separated you. The Countess stood in front of Monte Cristo, still holding part of the bunch of grapes in her hand. "Take it," she said. "I never eat Muscat grapes, madame," the Count replied, as if the matter had never been discussed between them before. "You are quite inflexible," she muttered. But Monte Cristo remained as impassive as though the reproach had not been addressed to him. At this moment Albert ran up. "Oh, mother!" he said. "A great disaster!" What has happened?" the Countess asked, stiffening, as though she had been recalled to reality from a dream. "A disaster? Indeed, disasters must happen. Monsieur de Villefort is here." "So? He's come to fetch his wife and daughter. Why?" "Because the Marquis de Saint-Marin has arrived in Paris, with the bad news that Monsieur de Saint-Marin died on leaving Marseille at the first post. Madame de Villefort, who was very merry, did not want to understand or believe in this misfortune, but Mademoiselle Valentine guessed everything from the first words. Despite her father's attempt to disguise it from her, the blow struck her down like a bolt of lightning, and she fell in a dead faint." "What is Monsieur de Saint-Marin to Mademoiselle de Villefort?" the Count asked. "Her maternal grandfather. He was coming to Paris to speed up his granddaughter's marriage to Franz." "Really?" "Now Franz is delayed. Why is Monsieur de Saint-Marin not also an ancestor of Mademoiselle Danglars?" "Albert, Albert," Madame de Morcerf said, gently reprimanding him. What are you saying? Oh, Monsieur le Comte, he has such a great respect for you. Tell him he shouldn't say such things." She took a step forward. Monte Cristo was looking so oddly at her, with an expression that was at once so abstracted and so full of affectionate admiration, that she advanced again, took his hand and that of her son, and joined them together. "We are friends, are we not?" she said. "Well now, madame," said the Count. "Your friend? I should not pretend to that. But in any case I am your most respectful servant." The Countess left with an inexpressible weight on her heart. It had not gone more than 10 yards when the Count even saw her dab her eyes with a handkerchief. "Have you fallen out over something, my mother and you?" Albert asked with astonishment. "On the contrary," the Count replied, "since she has just told me in front of you that we are friends." And they went back to the drawing-room which Valentine had just left with Madame and Monsieur de Villefort. It goes without saying that Morel followed them. And I think... yes, I think that is where we shall take a break for now. And we shall come back in about 5 minutes. Next time, just eat the grape. Yeah. So many names. I know, right? Yes, that... yeah, I was wondering if anyone was going to pick up as, like, describing his trousers, which contained... what did they contain, Dumas? A foot. Okay, right, gotcha. But yes. we shall head to a break. Go do break-related things. And we'll see you back in about 5 minutes. Bye for now.
We're back, we return. I hope everybody has had a good break. I hope we've all done break-related things, such as get tea and all of those things. But yeah, we have returned. So, interesting information about this book, which I forgot to say at the beginning, but because I have a brother who is a historian, and I mentioned to him that I was reading this, he of course had to look up everything to do with the Count of Monte Cristo, and apparently this is actually based on a true story. And apparently it's sort of, well, I say based on, like it obviously just makes everything very over the top and things, but apparently there was a guy who sort of lived a similar kind of life to Monte Cristo, like was kind of a bit of an enigma, and apparently he was Dumas's, I think, a grandfather, possibly? Based on Dumas's crush. It does sort of feel like it, but apparently he was an actual relative. It was a Dumas. I can't remember his first name, but apparently it was actually one of Dumas's relatives. I know, right? You'll have to do a Google, because this is coming from my brother, who, to be fair, this is not coming from him, this is coming from him Googling. So, I guess whatever Google says will be the same. But, yeah, so it's a self-insert. Yeah, pretty much. Because, I did wonder if it was a self-insert, because, I mean, gotta love them. These kinds of authors putting themselves in wonderful, dramatic roles. But, yeah, I thought that was really cool. Because apparently there was a guy who just for some reason had a really massive fortune and just went around being kind of confusing. And I think may have also had a similar kind of was arrested for being a Bonapartist and spent time in jail and then got out or something, escaped from prison. Not 100% sure, but. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. So thank you to my brother for going when I was sort of telling him. He was asking about the story, and I was telling him. He said, "That sounds like something that actually happened." I was like, "Really? You sure?" And he was like, "Let me Google." Obscenely rich and utterly incomprehensible. I know. That's kind of. I mean, in an ideal world. That sounds great. I'd love to be obscenely rich and utterly incomprehensible. I mean, yeah, I'd go for having that vibe. Goals, exactly, precisely. Being that confusing rich aunt, or other relative, who nobody quite knows why they've got their money, or how they got their money, but they got it. Pick up vegetables. Okay, well, go have fun picking up vegetables. And thank you for being here, Ray Tracer. Lovely to have you here. See you next time. But yeah, I thought that was really cool. So, yeah, the more you know. Because it's very much, oh, Count of Monte Cristo, I love him so much, it's so wonderful. But yeah. So I'm debating how long this is going to. Yeah, you can hear how many pages I'm turning here. I don't think I'm going to read the really long chapter because I don't think we'll have time. So I'll just read one more chapter, which might mean the stream is a little bit shorter, but we can make up for it next time by reading, I think, the 2 really long chapters that are next after this one. But yeah, we shall continue with whatever chapter we're on now. God knows. 72. Right. I hope we're all sitting comfortably. I shall continue. Chapter 72. Madame de Saint-Marin. A mournful scene had just taken place in Monsieur de Villefort's house. After the departure of the 2 ladies for the ball, all Madame de Villefort's efforts having failed definitely to persuade her husband to accompany her, the Crown Prosecutor had shut himself up, as usual, in his study, with a pile of dossiers which would have terrified another man, but which, in normal circumstances, would hardly have been enough to satisfy his mania for work. This time, however, the dossiers were merely a facade. Villefort was not shutting himself up to work, but to reflect. And once the door was shut and the order had been given that he should be disturbed only in an emergency, he sat down in the chair and went over in his mind everything that in the past week or so had filled his cup of bitter sorrows and dark memories to overflowing. Then, instead of starting on the pile of dossiers in front of him, he opened a drawer in his desk, released a secret spring, and took out a bundle of personal papers, precious manuscripts which he had put in order and labelled, with figures known only to him, the names of all those who had become his enemies, whether in his political career, his business dealings, his legal practice, or his secret love affairs. By this time the number was so huge that he began to tremble, and yet all these names, powerful and fearful as they were, had often brought a smile to his face, as a traveller may smile when, on reaching the summit of a mountain, he looks at the narrow peaks, impassable trails, and steep precipices beneath him, up which he struggled for so long to reach his present station. When he had gone through all the names in his memory, re-read them, studied them, and commented on each list, he shook his head. "No," he muttered. "None of those enemies would have waited and toiled patiently until now to come and crush me with this secret. Foul deeds will rise, as Hamlet says, and sometimes fly through the air like a will-o'-the-wisp, but these are flames that light us a moment to deceive." The story must have been told by the Corsican to some priest, and by him in turn to others. Monte Cristo learned it and wanted to verify it. But why want to verify it? He wondered after a moment's reflection. What interest can a dark, mysterious, and inconsequential event like that have for Monsieur de Monte Cristo, Monsieur Zaccone, son of a Maltese shipowner and operator of a Thessalian silver mine, who is paying his first visit to France? Among the jumble of information I obtained from that Abbé Busoni and Lord Wilmore, the friend and the enemy, only one thing stands out clearly and plainly in my view, which is that at no time, in no event, and under no circumstances, can there have been the slightest contact between him and me. But Villefort said this without believing his own words. The worst thing for him was not the revelation of what he had done, because he could deny it, or even reply to the accusation. It was not the mene tekel upharsin suddenly appearing in bloody letters on the wall. What troubled him was not knowing to what body the hand that traced them belonged. Just as he was trying to reassure himself, and in place of the political career which he had sometimes envisaged in his ambitious imaginings, he was resigning himself to a future confined to the joys of family life,
for fear of awakening this long-dormant enemy. He heard the sound of a carriage outside, and then the steps of an old person on the stairs, followed by sobs and exclamations of "Alas!" of the kind that servants emit when they want to make themselves interesting because of their master's sorrows. He hastened to pull back the bolt on his study door, and soon, unannounced, an old woman came in, a shawl on her arm and a hat in her hand. Her white hair disclosed a brow as dull as yellowed ivory, and her eyes, in the corners of which age had etched deep wrinkles, had almost vanished, so swollen were they with tears.
"Oh, monsieur," she said. "Oh, monsieur, what a misfortune! I too shall die of it. Oh, yes, I shall surely die."
And collapsing into the nearest armchair, she dissolved into tears. The servants, standing at the door and not daring to advance into the room, turned to look at Noirtier's old manservant who, having heard the noise from his master's room and hurried across, was now standing behind the rest. Villefort got up and ran over to his mother-in-law, for she it was. Heaven preserve us, madame," he exclaimed. "What has happened? Who has put you in this state? And is Monsieur de Saint-Marin not with you?"
"Monsieur de Saint-Marin is dead,"
the old Marchioness said, coming directly to the matter, but without any sign of feeling, in a kind of stupor. Villefort started back and struck his hands together. "Dead?" he stammered. "Dead? Like that? So suddenly?"
"A week ago," Madame de Saint-Marin continued, "we were getting into the carriage after dinner. For some days Monsieur de Saint-Marin had been unwell, yet the idea of seeing our dear Valentine gave him strength despite his pain. He was just starting out when, 6 leagues from Marseille, after taking his usual pills, he fell into an unnaturally deep sleep. I was unwilling to wake him, but then his face seemed to go red and the veins in his temples to beat more violently than usual. However, as it was now night and getting too dark to see, I let him sleep. Shortly afterwards he gave a dull, heart-rending cry, like a man tormented by a nightmare, and sharply threw back his head. I called the valet, had the coach stopped, called to Monsieur de Saint-Marin and got him to breathe my sal volatile, but it was over. He was dead, and I excuse me, and I journeyed to A, seated beside his corpse." Villefort stood there, thunderstruck, his mouth gaping. "You called a doctor, I suppose?" he said. "Immediately, but, as I told you, it was too late."
"Oh, of course, but at least he could say from what illness the poor Marquis died."
"Yes, monsieur, he did that. It appears to have been an apoplectic stroke."
"So what did you do?"
"Monsieur de Saint-Marin always used to say that if he died far from Paris, he would like his body to be brought to rest in the family vault. I had it put into a lead coffin, and it is on its way, a few days' drive behind me."
"Oh, poor mother," said Villefort, "to be entrusted with such a task, and after such a blow."
"God gave me strength, and in any case the dear Marquis would surely have done for me what I did for him. It is true that, since I left him behind me there, I have felt I am going mad. I can no longer weep, yet I feel that one should do so as long as one is suffering. Where is Valentine, monsieur? We were coming for her. I want to see Valentine."
Villefort thought that it would be frightful to reply that Valentine was at the ball. He simply told the Marchioness that her granddaughter had gone out with her stepmother, and that she would be informed.
"Now, monsieur, at once, I beg you,"
said the old lady. Villefort slipped his arm under that of Madame de Saint-Marin and took her to her apartment. "Rest, mother," he said. At that word, The Marchioness looked up, and, seeing the man who reminded her of the much-mourned daughter who seemed to live again for her in Valentine, struck by the name of mother, she burst into tears and sank to her knees before a chair in which she buried her venerable head. Villefort told the women to look after her, while old Barrois hurried across in a state of consternation to his master. Nothing terrifies old people so much as when death leaves their side to strike down another old person. Then, while Madame de Saint-Méran, still kneeling, began to pray from the depths of her heart, Villefort sent for a carriage and took it himself to collect his wife and daughter from Madame de Morcerf's. He was so pale when he got to the door of the drawing-room that Valentine ran across to him crying, "Oh, father, something terrible has happened." "Your grandmother has just arrived, Valentine," he said.
"And grandfather?"
the girl asked, trembling. Monsieur de Villefort's only reply was to give her his arm. He was only just in time, because Valentine reeled, nearly fainting. Madame de Villefort hurried over to support her and helped her husband to get her into the carriage, saying, "How strange! Who would have thought it? This truly is strange." With that, the stricken family drove off, casting its sadness like a black veil across the rest of the gathering. Valentine found Barrois waiting for her at the foot of the stairs.
"Monsieur Noirtier would like to see you this evening,"
he whispered.
"Tell him to expect me when I have seen my dear grandmother,"
Valentine said, her delicate soul having realized that Madame de Saint-Méran was the person who needed her most at that time. She found her in bed. Silent caresses, painful swelling of the heart, broken sighs and burning tears were the only positive events in what passed between them. Madame de Villefort was also present, on her husband's arm, and was full of respect for the poor widow, or so at least it seemed. After a short while she leant across to whisper in her husband's ear, "With your permission, I think I should retire, because the sight of me appears to make your mother-in-law more distressed." Madame de Saint-Méran overheard the remark. "Yes, yes," she said in Valentine's ear. "Let her go, but you stay." Madame de Villefort went out, and Valentine was left alone at her grandmother's bedside, because the Crown Prosecutor, dismayed at this unexpected death, followed his wife. Barrois, however, had gone back to Noirtier's side the first time. The old man had heard the commotion in the house and sent his servant, as we had said, to find out the cause of it. When he returned, the lively and, above all, intelligent eyes asked for his message. "Alas, monsieur," said Barrois, "something terrible has happened. Madame de Saint-Méran is here, and her husband is dead." Monsieur de Saint-Méran and Noirtier had never been close, but the effect on one old man of hearing that another has died is well known. Noirtier let his head fall on his chest, like a man weighed down with sorrow or deep in thought, then shut one eye. "Mademoiselle Valentine?" Barrois asked. Noirtier indicated yes. "Monsieur knows very well that she is at the ball, because she came to say goodbye and to show him her dress." Noirtier again shut his left eye. "You want to see her?" The old man indicated that he did. "Well, no doubt they are going to fetch her from Madame de Morcerf's. I shall await her on her return and tell her to come up. Is that correct?" "Yes," said the paralyzed man. This is why Barrois was waiting for Valentine's return, and, as we have seen, informed her of her grandfather's wishes. Consequently, Valentine went up to Monsieur Noirtier's on leaving Madame de Saint-Méran, who, despite her distress, had finally succumbed to tiredness, and was sleeping feverishly. Within her reach they had put a little table with a carafe of orange juice, her usual drink, and a glass. When that was done, the girl left the Marchioness's bedside to go up to Noirtier. She went to kiss the old man, who looked at her with such tenderness that the young woman felt new tears rising to her eyes from a well that she thought had dried. The old man looked insistently at her. "Yes, yes," said Valentine. "What you are saying is that I still have one good grandfather. Is that it?" The old man indicated that this was indeed what his look had meant. "Luckily, alas," said Valentine, "because without that, what would become of me?" It was 1 o'clock in the morning. Barrois, who wanted to go to bed himself, remarked that after such a painful evening everyone needed rest. The old man did not like to say that rest, as far as he was concerned, was to see his granddaughter. He sent Valentine away. Tiredness and sorrow had indeed made her look unwell. The next day she came in to see her grandmother and found her still in bed. Her fever had not gone down. On the contrary, a dull fire burned in the old Marchioness's eyes, and she seemed to have been seized by a violent fit of nervous irritation. "Oh, my dear grandmother, are you feeling worse this morning?" Valentine exclaimed, seeing these signs of agitation. "No, no, my girl," said Madame de Saint-Méran. "I was waiting for you to come so that I could send you to fetch your father." "My father?" Valentine asked anxiously. "Yes, I want to speak to him." Valentine did not dare to object to the old woman's wish, and in any case did not know what was behind it, so a moment later Villefort came in. "Monsieur," Madame de Saint-Méran said without any preliminaries, and as though she was afraid of running out of time. You wrote to tell me that there were plans to marry your daughter, I believe." "Yes, madame," Villefort replied. "It is more than a plan, it is an agreement." "And your future son-in-law is Franz d'Épinay?" "Yes, madame." "Son of General d'Épinay, one of our people, who was assassinated a few days before the usurper returned from Elba?" "Precisely." "The son is not deterred by the idea of marrying the granddaughter of a Jacobin?" "Thankfully, mother, our civil strife is ended," said Villefort. "Monsieur d'Épinay was little more than a child when his father died. He is not well acquainted with Monsieur Noirtier, and will regard him, if not with pleasure, at least with indifference." "Is it a good match?" "In every way. The young man enjoys general respect." "Is he acceptable?" "He is one of the most distinguished young men I know." Valentine had remained silent throughout this conversation. "Well, monsieur," said Madame de Saint-Méran after a few moments' thought, "you must hurry, because I have little time left to live." "You, madame? You, dear grandmother?" Villefort and Valentine exclaimed together. "I know what I am saying," the Marchioness went on. "You must hurry so that, not having a mother, she may at least have a grandmother to bless her marriage. I am the only one remaining to her from the side of my poor dear Renée, whom you so soon forgot, monsieur." "Madame," said Villefort, "you forget that I had to give this poor child a mother when she no longer had her own." "A stepmother can never be a mother." "But we're not talking about that. We're talking about Valentine. Let the dead lie." All this was said with such volubility and emphasis that the conversation almost seemed like the beginning of a delirium. "Everything will be done according to your wishes, madame," said Villefort, "particularly as they accord with my own, and as soon as Monsieur d'Épinay arrives in Paris—" "Grandmother," said Valentine, "think of convention, your recent bereavement. Would you wish a marriage to take place under such sad auspices?" "My dear girl," said the grandmother, brusquely interrupting her, "don't give me any of those trite arguments that prevent weak minds from building a solid future for themselves. I too was married at my mother's deathbed, and was no unhappier for that." "Again, this idea of death, madame," said Villefort. "Again, still, I tell you I am going to die, do you understand?"
Well, before dying, I want to see my grandson-in-law. I want to tell him to make my granddaughter happy. I want to read in his eyes whether he intends to obey me. In short, I want to know him," the old woman continued with a terrifying look, "so that I can seek him out from the depth of my tomb if he is not what he should be, if he is not what he must be."
"Madame," said Villefort, "you must put aside such wild fancies which are close to madness. Once the dead have been laid in their tombs, they sleep there and do not return."
"Oh, yes, grandmother, calm yourself," said Valentine. "Whatever you say, monsieur," the Marchioness said, "I have to tell you that things are not as you believe. Last night I slept very badly. I could, as it were, see myself sleeping, as though my soul was already hovering above my body. I struggled to open my eyes, but they refused to obey me. I know that this will seem impossible to you, especially to you, monsieur, but with my eyes shut, at the very spot where you are now standing, coming from the corner where there is a door leading to Madame de Villefort's dressing-room, I saw a white shape."
Valentine gave a cry. Villefort said, "You were feverish, madame."
"Doubt me if you wish, but I am sure of what I am saying. I saw a white figure, and as if God were afraid that I might doubt the evidence of any of my senses, I heard my glass move, that glass on the table."
"Oh, grandmother, it was a dream."
"It was so surely not a dream that I reached out for the bell, and upon that the shadow vanished. Then the chambermaid came in with a lantern. Ghosts only appear to those who ought to see them. This was the soul of my husband. Well, if my husband's soul is coming back to call me, why should my soul not come back to defend my granddaughter? I think the tie is even stronger."
In spite of himself, Villefort was profoundly shaken. "Madame," he said, "do not give way to such mournful ideas. You will live with us, you will live for a long time, happy, loved, honoured, and we shall help you to forget."
"Never, never, never," said the Marquise. "When does Monsieur d'Épinay return?"
"We are expecting him at any moment."
"Very well. Tell me as soon as he arrives. We must hurry. Then I should like to see a lawyer to ensure that all our property goes to Valentine."
"Oh, grandmother," Valentine murmured, pressing her lips to the old woman's burning brow. "Do you want me to die? You are feverish. It is not a lawyer you need, but a doctor."
"A doctor?" she said, shrugging her shoulders. "I am not in pain, a little thirsty, that's all."
"What would you like to drink?"
"You know what I like, my orange juice. The glass is on that table. Please give it to me, Valentine."
Valentine poured out the orange juice from the carafe into the glass, and forced herself to pick it up and give it to her grandmother. This was the same glass that the ghost was supposed to have touched. The Marquise emptied it at a single gulp, then lay back on her pillow, saying,
"A lawyer! A lawyer!"
Monsieur de Villefort went out. Valentine sat down near her grandmother's bed. The poor child herself seemed much in need of the doctor whom she had suggested calling. Her cheeks burned red, her breathing was short and panting, and her pulse was beating as if she had a high temperature. She was thinking of Maximilien's despair when he learned that Madame de Saint-Méran, instead of being an ally, was unconsciously acting as though she were his enemy. More than once, Valentine had thought of telling her grandmother everything, and she would not have hesitated for a moment if Maximilien Morel had been called Albert de Morcerf or Raoul de Château-Renard, but Morel came from a lower-class family, and Valentine knew how much the proud Marquise de Saint-Méran despised everyone who was not well-bred. Consequently, when her secret had been on the point of coming out, it had been driven back into her heart by the sad assurance that she would reveal it in vain, and that once her father and grandmother shared that secret, all would be lost. About 2 hours passed. Madame de Saint-Méran slept fitfully and feverishly. The lawyer was announced. Even though the servant had spoken very softly,
Madame de Saint-Marin sat up in bed. "The lawyer," she said. "Have him brought here."
He had been standing outside and came in.
"Go away, Valentine," Madame de Saint-Marin said, "and leave me with this gentleman."
"But, grandmother—"
"Go, go."
The girl kissed her grandmother's forehead and went out, holding a handkerchief to her eyes. At the door she found the valet de chambre, who told her that the doctor was waiting in the drawing-room. Valentine quickly went down. The doctor was a family friend and at the same time one of the most skilled of his profession. He was very fond of Valentine, whom he had seen being born. He had a daughter of roughly Mademoiselle de Villefort's age, but whose mother was a consumptive. His life was spent in continual fear for her child.
"Oh, dear Monsieur d'Avrigny," said Valentine, "we have been waiting for you. But first of all, how are Madeleine and Antoinette?"
Madeleine was Monsieur d'Avrigny's daughter, Antoinette his niece. "Antoinette very well," he answered with a sad smile. "Madeleine quite well. But you called for me, my dear child. I hope it is not your father or Madame de Villefort who is ill. As for us, although clearly we have trouble overcoming our nerves, I suppose you have no need of me except to recommend that you don't let your imagination run away with you." Valentine blushed. Monsieur d'Avrigny had almost miraculous powers of divination. He was one of those doctors who always treat physical ills through the mind. "No," she said. "It's my poor grandmother. I suppose you know the misfortune that we have suffered." "I don't know anything," said d'Avrigny. "Alas," Valentine said, repressing a sob, "my grandfather is dead."
"Monsieur de Saint-Marin?
Was it sudden?" "An attack of apoplexy."
"Apoplexy?"
the doctor repeated. "Yes, and the result is that my poor grandmother has the idea that her husband, whose side she never left, is calling for her and she is going to join him. Oh, Monsieur d'Avrigny, please go and look at her."
"Where is she?"
"In her room with the lawyer."
"And Monsieur Nortier?"
"Always the same, perfectly clear in his mind, but still immobile and speechless." "And still as affectionate towards you, I imagine, my dear child?" "Oh, yes, he is very fond of me," Valentine said with a sigh. "Who would not be?" She smiled sadly. "How does your grandmother's illness manifest itself?" "Unusual nervous excitement and oddly troubled sleep. This morning she claimed that while she was asleep her soul had hovered above her body and that she had seen herself sleeping. She's delirious. She claimed to have seen a ghost come into her room and heard the noise made by this supposed ghost when it touched her glass." "That's odd," the doctor said. "I did not know Madame de Saint-Marin was subject to such hallucinations." "This is the first time I have seen her like that," said Valentine. "This morning she really frightened me. I thought she was going mad. Even my father and— Monsieur d'Avrigny, you know what a serious-minded man my father is. Even my father seemed deeply troubled." "Let's go and see. What you tell me is odd." The lawyer came down, and the servant came to tell Valentine that her grandmother was alone. "Go up," she said to the doctor. "What about you?" I dare not. She forbade me to send for you. And then, as you say, I am upset, feverish, and unwell. I shall take a walk around the garden to revive myself." The doctor shook Valentine's hand, and while he went up to her grandmother, she went down the steps. We hardly need say what part of the garden was Valentine's favourite walk. After walking twice round the path that encircled the house, and plucking a rose to put in her hair or her belt, she set off down the dark path that led to the bench, and then from the bench she went across to the grill. This time, as usual, she walked 2 or 3 times round among her flowers, but without picking any. The mourning in her heart, though it had not yet had time to be reflected in her dress, rejected that simple ornament. Then she went over to the path by the gate. As she was going there, she thought she heard a voice speaking her name. She stopped short in astonishment. The voice seemed more distinct, and she recognized it as Maximilien's. And there I think we shall end for tonight.